Okay. Here we go. So my name is Leah Reese-Russell. I'm the Chief Programs Officer for the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. Among other things, the most important and why you are here today is to learn about the grant opportunities that we offer here at the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. There are 3 grants that are either currently open or that will be opening within the next week, and we'll discuss those. During this call, I would like to ask that everyone remain muted. I will pause periodically throughout the presentation to answer your questions, but at any time during the presentation, if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat box. I am joined today by Claire Cattell, who is our administrative assistant and will be managing the text box. And I'll stop periodically to take those questions from the chat box, or if you feel comfortable unmuting yourself to ask a question at that time, feel free to do so during those breaks. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. Here we go. I hope everyone can see. So what we'll be covering today are those 3 programs that I discussed: the Charles Lamarr Shaw Center Subsidy Grant, a new grant program to the Arts Council called Get Ready Grants, and the Louisiana Project Grants. Those of you that are familiar with our re-granting program here at the Arts Council may know the Louisiana Project Grants from its previous name, which was the Decentralized Arts Fund, or DAF. This is our 2nd year that DAF has now been produced as the Louisiana Project Grants. So you'll hear about those, and for each one of these grant programs, the Shaw Center Subsidy Grant, the Get Ready Grant, and the Louisiana Project Grants, we're going to talk about the guidelines and the procedures, the application and review process, some very general writing and organizational tips when you're preparing your application, and then take any questions from you. So the first grant, the Charles Lamar Family Foundation Shaw Center Subsidy Grant, that is a tongue twister, and I get it tangled up every time. But this is a grant that is available year-round while funds are available. It is specifically for rental costs associated with renting any of the spaces in the Shaw Center for the Arts. So that includes the Manship Theater, the Hartley Bay Theaters, the 4th floor River Terrace, and the gallery at the Manship. It's available to 501c3 nonprofit organizations that are domiciled in East Baton Rouge Parish only. Public schools, private schools, school boards, colleges, and universities are eligible to apply. And it goes, again, as I said, towards the rental cost, up to half of the rental cost, or a maximum of $3,500. And as I said, these applications are open year-round. We just ask that you apply at least 2 months prior to the date of your rental. And to apply, you'll see one of these little images for every grant we talk about. Where you apply and how to get there is via our website, www.artsbr.org/Lamarr. And you'll see the green button at the bottom that says application. Right now, if you were to go to the website and click application, you would come up with a paper form, and you'd either have to print it out or make it fillable and fill it out PDF style. In the next couple of weeks, we are going to move that grant to our online platform that you will use for the next 2 grants that I'm going to talk about, and it's called Submittable. We're streamlining all of our application processes so that applicants only need 1 login. They learn 1 platform, and everything goes through there. It's a more secure way to capture your sensitive information. It keeps me organized. It keeps our organization organized. and it keeps you guys, the applicants, organized as well, because all of your grant information will be stored within your submittable login. As I said, right now, if you were to apply for a Lamarr grant, you're going to get that paper form. I would say by August of this year, you will be able to apply for the Lamarr grant using your submittable login. So stay tuned for that. Our next application grant program is for a program called Get Ready Grants. This is new to Louisiana and new to the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge, but it has been in existence for a few years through the Craft Emergency Relief Fund, which is now known as SURF+. SURF+ is an organization that we've been working with for a few years now, and their sole existence is to help artists and craft workers safeguard their careers, prepare for emergencies, various types of emergencies, and to recover from disasters and other emergencies that may impair artists from creating, exhibiting, and profiting from their work. And this grant program is an expansion of the CARP program that is produced through SURF+, the SURF+ Artist Readiness Program, and it funds projects that safeguard students' creative careers and prepare for emergencies. And we are super grateful to be able to offer these Get Ready grants to Louisiana artists. This is an application and a grant program specifically for artists, and it is presented in partnership with SURF+, but it is funded by the Mellon Foundation. So the application period for these grants will open on June 13th, and it will close at 5 p.m. on July 1st. Please excuse the typo that I am just now seeing there. And so the application is June 13th through July 1st, and the funded projects have to occur within 6 months of receipt of the grant funds. So you will likely receive notification 4 to 8 weeks from the deadline. Takes about a week or two to get notification out, to get you guys the information and the agreements you need. You guys sign them, send them back to us. So from the date of receipt of the grant funds, your grant funded activity needs to occur within 6 months. And the grant requests range from $500 to $1,500. This is a relatively simple application process because SURF+ really wants to prioritize getting the information out, getting the tools out to artists and craft workers on safeguarding their livelihoods and their artistic practices in the physical spaces that they utilize. You'll notice that the eligibility requirements for this application are much leaner than what you'll see with Louisiana Project Grants. So in order to be eligible for this award, you must be an artist working in a visual performance or craft discipline, residing in Louisiana for the last 2 years. So this is unique because we are able to grant these funds to anyone who is a working artist, at least for the last 2 years in the entire state of Louisiana. And then you cannot be a recipient of a Get Ready grant during calendar year 2021. So if you lived somewhere else that was administering this grant program through SURF+ in another state, and you received a grant somehow during calendar year 2021, you would not be eligible to receive one from us through this program. So as I said, these funds go directly to artists for projects that are meant to safeguard and secure their artistic practices, their work, their students, the physical spaces they work in, their livelihoods. And so the first step to doing that and determining where to start is by doing a risk assessment. One of the things that makes SURF+ really great is that they put funds behind these types of projects, but they also offer a lot of resources For those of you that may not know where to start, you know that you need to do something, but you're not quite sure what that something is. So we encourage you to go to the Surf Plus website that will walk you through a risk assessment to determine where your risks are and what's a feasible way to create a plan that might be a good fit for this project. And they have other resources on that website as well, ways to protect your studio, an insurance hub. What type of insurance should you be having as an artist? If you are a teaching artist, what type of insurance you should carry, self-care and your studio practice, other education and training tools that you'll find is building a sustaining your safety net, creating a legacy for your work, and then business insurance. All of that can be found at surfplus.org. We do encourage you to look at those resources prior to applying and prior to developing an application or a project, because this will inform and be a better fit for your needs once you utilize these resources that are here. I also want to mention that on our website, and I'll show you a little later, Carrie Cleveland from Surf Plus gave us a lovely presentation during the 2022 Arts Summit about this grant program, and we'll dug a little bit deeper into the types of projects that have been funded in the past. I very much encourage you to watch that video. It is currently on our website, and I'll show you a little bit later how to access it. So once you use those tools and you determine where your risks lie, what's a reasonable project for you to start with, maybe you determine that you need several projects, but you got to start somewhere. Once you decide where you want to start and you're ready to look at the application, these are the types of projects that are funded by these grant dollars. So COVID, career resilience, we are still in a pandemic. Things are a bit better than they were, but there were still many challenges that artists and craft workers and arts workers faced. And so dollars from this grant program can go towards tutorials and training in e-commerce, professional photography, to create a portfolio, employing the service of website designers, short-term support for childcare, to allow for studio time, and installing equipment for safety work in your studio and your staff and with your students. Business protection is another project that can be funded by this grant program. So the documentation and the archiving of your work, inventory software that may need to be purchased and utilized, any business planning for continuity and contingency. If you're hiring someone to help or assist with that business planning, their fees can be paid using these funds, and then creating secure business record keeping systems as well. Emergency and disaster relief. So tools and supplies and equipment that are going to safeguard your space and your artwork and your inventory. Any upgrades to reduce disaster risk, contracting, consulting, and theft protection measures. Career protection. So legacy and estate planning, financial planning, legal counsel, any of those specialized areas where you might need a consultant or some type of contract for professional services, those fees can be utilized with this grant program. Also, if there are any professional development courses that you yourself would like to take that are assisting in your own career protection, those fees can be covered using these grant funds as well. What we do not fund through the Get Ready Grant program, since it is very much based in preparedness, we don't fund art making projects or projects that focus on enhancing your artistic capabilities. So it's not about making the art or enhancing the art, it's about protection and preparedness. So the evaluation process is fairly simple. You will log on to our website and log into the submittable platform. We'll look at the feasibility of your project. Is it reasonable? Is it realistic? Does your budget account for all of the expenses that you list? And is that reasonable? And then do you have a plan for sharing this project with the community? And we'll talk about that later, because essentially that plan for sharing your project is your final report. If you are accustomed to filling out applications and grants and final reports, you know that sometimes there can be a lot involved in that. While this is still a final report for this particular grant, it's going to look very different. It's going to look like a very quick survey on our behalf that will come through submittable. But the main part of the final report is going to be on how you plan to share your project and your process with the community. SURF Plus likes to prioritize continuing education throughout the community, throughout the arts community, throughout craft workers and folk art workers. And so documentation and archive of this process is going to be part of your final report. And then the awards are determined by lottery. So once we determine that you're eligible and that your application is good to go, we will auto select applicants, but we will prioritize underserved populations, including people of color and folk artists. And then once you're awarded, again, I bring up Submittable because I think it's such a great platform. Everything related to your grant goes directly through Submittable. So you'll apply through Submittable, you'll submit everything through Submittable, you'll be notified through Submittable, and any grant related contracts and additional documents that you need to submit will be submitted to me through that platform. It keeps your documents and keeps your information secure that way. So you will sign a grant agreement, submit a W-9 IRS form, and a photo ID through Submittable. You'll participate in SURF Plus virtual training, which are all of those resources that I just mentioned a little while ago on the SURF Plus website. You'll agree to complete your project within 6 months of receipt of your grant funds. You'll adhere to the grant guidelines, which includes referencing SURF Plus and the Lamar Foundation when you are posting on your website or on social media about your project. And using the proper hashtags. All of that is encompassed in a communication bundle that is given to awardees, so you know exactly what is required. There's also a credit statement that mentions, again, SURF Plus, the Lamar Foundation, and then also the Arts Council as the administrator of the grant. And then, as I said, that final report needs to be submitted within 45 days of completion of your project. So just to go back so that we can have a clear timeline, once you are notified of your award, you will fill out some paperwork, submit some other things to me, you'll receive your check. Your project has to be completed within 6 months after you receive that check, and then your final report needs to be completed 45 days after completion of the project. Again, the final report is just a short survey that will be sent to you through Submittable, and then a plan for sharing the project with the community. And that can look like a variety of different things. It can be a video, it can be an online blog, it can be a social media posting. There's tons of examples at the link that is listed here, and I believe Claire is also putting it in the chat as well, ways that artists who have received this grant in the past have chosen to not only archive their project, but be able to share it in an easy way. And I have here, I hope this works, I think it is, this is a previous grantee, not from Louisiana, because again, this is a new project to Louisiana. This is a 7-minute video on how she chose to share her project, her grant-funded project. We're not going to watch the whole 7 minutes, but I just kind of want you to see a little bit of the format, since this is a really cool way and a very easy way to continue the education of SURF Plus and the CARP program. So we're just going to watch a few minutes of it, and then we'll pause, ask some questions and answer some questions if there are any, and then we'll move on to our final grant. So I'm hearing that some of you cannot hear the video. Is that true? Feel free to unmute yourself and let me know.
Can't hear it.
Can't hear it. Okay, I apologize for that. I'm not certain why, but I will make sure that everyone who's in attendance today gets a copy of this link so that, in fact, I think I can do it right now. Maybe not. I won't try to get too fancy on here while I'm on the call with you, but I will make sure that this video is sent to you so that you can see an example of how this work has been documented. It's also on the link that Claire dropped in the chat a while back at surfplus.org. And to apply, once these grants open on June 13th, you will go to artsvr.org/GRG. I mentioned earlier, Carrie Cleveland of Surplus, who presented a workshop about this grant program in March of this year. Her webinar is stellar, and she goes very deep into the types of projects that can be funded and give some lovely examples. Next to the red starburst is the link for that video. I do encourage you watch that. Next to the red arrow is where you'll click to apply for the grant when it opens on June 13th. And that application process will close at 5 p.m. on July 1st. And right now I would like to take a pause. And Claire, if you don't mind unmuting yourself, and if there are any questions, you can feed those to me and I'm happy to answer them. Does anyone else on the call have questions at this time? Feel free to unmute yourself if you need to. Okay, then I'm going to keep going. Our final grant program that we have available is the Louisiana Project Grants. This is our second year of Louisiana Project Grants. You may formally know this grant program as the DAF program. It is essentially the same, except there are a few minor changes. And again, we are in our second year, so there should be some familiarity with how these projects are funded, what the priorities are of the Louisiana Division of the Arts, and the criteria. So this application has been open since May 16th. The application is live and it is on our website currently, and it closes on July 1st at 5 p.m. These are for projects that occur October 1st of 2022 through September 30th of 2023. Projects and expenses that occur outside of that timeline are not eligible. And the grant request is a minimum of $2,500 and a maximum of $7,500. We administer these grants on behalf of the Division of the Arts, the Louisiana Office of Cultural Development, Department of Culture, Recreation, and Tourism. We are super grateful for their support, not only in this grant program, but in other programs and all of our operations. I put this graphic up here for a reason. If you happen to be on this call and you are not residing within one of the 11 parishes in Region 2, you are eligible to apply, but not through the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge. These funds are allocated by the state based on parish and are administered through the 9 regional arts councils, and you must apply within the Arts Council where your organization is domiciled. You also have to make sure that your project occurs within the region where you are applying. If you're looking at this, for example, you cannot apply in Region 9 in St. Tammany and receive St. Tammany funds for a project that is happening in Orleans Parish, which is Region 1. I know that the geographic proximity seems close, but it is all based on who is supposed to administer your application based on the address on file for the organization with the Louisiana Secretary of State. We did have some instances last year where organizations had the bulk of their work occurred right across a parish line, but their address was in another parish and they were in separate regions, and that caused a lot of issues. So I just want to make it clear that in order for you to apply for this grant through the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge, you need to be residing and domiciled, and the project needs to be occurring in one of the 11 parishes within Region 2. If that is not the case for you, I am happy to share the contact person within the other region that you would need to apply with. So I'm not going to read the LDOA, Division of the Arts Equity Statement, but I just wanted to put it here. The change from DAF to LPG is primarily based on diversity, equity, inclusion, and access, and the division's priority in making sure that not only the projects that are being produced in Louisiana are through those lenses, but the audiences and the participants and the collaborators of those projects are also diverse, and the projects are done in ways that are equitable and inclusive. And you'll see that reflected in the priorities of the grant program. We want to stimulate healthy competition in grant proposals and submissions. We want to increase creativity and innovation and an awareness of new trends and project development. We want people to try things that are new. We want people to switch up what they've been doing for years and create new partnerships or reach out to new audiences by reinvigorating what has typically been done. So those are the priorities of the grant program and why some of the changes happened from DAF to LPG. The projects that are funded through this program have to be based in one of the primary art forms, which is dance, design arts, folk art, literature, media, music, theater, or visual arts. You need to, in the application, be able to show how this project promotes diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. There must be an emphasis on innovation and artistry. Again, trying something new and risk-taking. We love to see cross-parish partnerships, especially with urban and rural communities. I do want to again reiterate, though, that those partnerships, while we encourage cross-parish partnerships, it has to be cross-parish partnerships within the same region. And so this just highlights the art forms, one or more, that need to be included in your project. So, eligible applicants. How do you know if you're eligible to apply for the Louisiana Project Grants? You need to be a nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization. Local, parish, and state government agencies such as libraries or municipalities are eligible. This is one that I did not know as a teacher, and I want to scream it to all of the teachers or anyone in education on this call. Public and private schools and school boards are eligible. Teachers, you are eligible, not as an individual, but I'm going to talk a little bit later about how teachers and schools can also apply for this money. Colleges and universities are also eligible, but it needs to be projects that are not specifically for the student body. It needs to be community projects created or produced by those colleges and universities that are for the larger community, that are not related to academic, credit producing, or curriculum oriented projects. And then organizations and entities or individual artists who may not fit one of those criteria that I talked about previously can apply if they use a fiscal agent that meets one of those criteria. So your fiscal agent, let's say you are an artist, an individual artist, or a teacher, and you want to apply for these funds, you can do so with a fiscal agent. And the fiscal agent is the applicant. They are the one that is completing the majority of the information on the application. A lot of their IRS and legal and tax information is what's going to need to be submitted. They are the applicant, and then the person who is utilizing that fiscal agent is the sub-applicant. When you get into the application on Submittable, you'll see where there is the applicant and the sub-applicant. In the example that I just gave, if I'm an artist and I connect with another arts organization as my fiscal agent, that organization is the applicant. They assume legal and financial responsibility. I, as the individual, am the sub-applicant. We cannot require this, but it is highly recommended when you enter into a fiscal agent agreement. Be very clear with that fiscal agent to define the scope of services and the obligations between you as the sub-applicant and the fiscal agent, and outline that in some type of agreement. We as the Arts Council and the grant administrator have nothing to do with that agreement, but we encourage that you draft that agreement and make sure that both parties understand their obligations, because the fiscal agent is the applicant. They are also the awardee / grantee, and they are the one that the check goes to. So it is important that once that check goes to that organization, there is some other documentation existing that just shows that there is a partnership and an agreement amongst both parties as to how those funds will be spent. So your fiscal agent may serve as a fiscal agent for 2 applications in addition to their own application. This happens frequently where the organization themselves apply, they are eligible, they apply for their own project, but then they also serve as a fiscal agent for up to 2 other applicants. They must be domiciled in the same region where the sub-applicant is domiciled and where the same region where the project will take place. They may not serve as a service provider on the same project. So if I am an organization and I am serving as a fiscal agent for an individual artist, that artist cannot then receive those funds and then pay me back. And then sometimes fiscal agents charge a fee. That fee cannot exceed $150. Ineligible applicants, people who cannot apply. If you're receiving line item support from the state legislature or any other state arts related line item into your budget, you're not eligible to apply. Regional arts councils may not apply. We are the ones administering the funds, so we cannot ourselves apply. If your organization or as an individual, if you are not in compliance with any grant programs that are administered by the Regional Arts Council, the Decentralized Arts Funding Program, or the Division of the Arts. The reason Decentralized Arts Funding Program is in there is because the last time we administered that particular program was fiscal year 20. And because of COVID and delays in projects and reporting, there are still some documents and reporting that are being done for fiscal year 20. And so if you're out of compliance for any of those grant programs, the Division of the Arts or the Regional Arts Councils, you will not be able to apply for this grant program. Also, if you are not in good standing with the Louisiana Secretary of State, you will not be eligible. And also, those who have not signed up for their unique entity identifier, their UEI, which is a new 12-digit alphanumeric code provided by SAM.gov. Most people have obtained their UEI, some have not. You have to have a UEI in order to apply for this grant. So we encourage you to visit SAM.gov to make sure that your UEI is current. And I'm going to pause for just a moment. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and we will be right back in just a moment. Hi guys, we're in real time and the TV just started rolling, so I needed to turn it off and take care of that. So I apologize if you heard any background noise, but that's what that was. Somebody's working on tech stuff downstairs and turn the TV on up here. We will move on. For the Louisiana Project Grants, you will be required to match funds. You have to have a 50% cash match is required. So an example is if you are asking for $5,000 from the Arts Council for the Louisiana Project Grant, you have to show that you have at least $2,500 in cash as a match. That allows us to see that there is some sustainability within your project, that there's value and that you find value in the project to the point where you're able to secure other funding should you not be funded by this project, or should you receive funding from us, but it's less than what you really wanted. It shows that there's community need, community value in the community, and that there's a need being addressed through the project. Your matching funds cannot be state funds from any source. They cannot be funds used for state-owned facilities or equipment. They cannot go towards faculty salaries. So if you are a university and you're applying, the salaries of instructors that may be involved in the project cannot be part of that cash match. Administrative costs from state institutions, any funds that you've received from the National Endowment for the Arts or in-kind contributions, none of those can be included in your cash match. They can be included as part of the total project budget, but they cannot be part of your cash match. Your cash match has to be just that, cash, and it cannot come from one of these sources listed here. So there is a long list of ineligible project expenses. I got 4 pages of them. I am not going to read them all to you, but I do want to have them here for documentation purposes. They're also listed on our website when you download the full grant guideline packet. But I'm listing them here just so that you can look over them. Basically, everything here is ineligible expenses for this project. When we fund Louisiana Project Grants, we want these funds to go toward direct costs for creating and producing the project. So artist fees, specific materials and equipment that are utilized to produce or exhibit the project, those are the kinds of costs we're looking at. Operational costs that are directly related to the project. Those are things that are eligible. These things here are ineligible. And again, I don't want to read them all to you, but I just wanted to have them there. And again, they are in the full list of guidelines. The evaluation rubric for this application. This is a competitive grant program. So there is a rubric and there is a review process to determine eligibility and funding. 35% of the total score for your application will be on artistic merit. 35% will be need and impact. Why does the community need your project? Is your project self-serving? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but the priority of this grant is to engage the community, not only in art making, but art consumption. So is your project, is there a need for it? Or is it just art for art's sake? Again, nothing wrong with art for art's sake, but we do want to look at community need. Planning and design is 20% of the score, and administration and your budget is 10% of the score. So in artistic merit, we're looking at the expertise of the artist and the providers of service. I'm going to address something real quick. A lot of you will apply for these funds far in advance of actual project implementation. And sometimes I have grantees that ask me, well, I can't fill out the provider of service. I can't tell you who the artists are. I don't know who those artists are yet. I haven't contracted with them. We understand that. We understand that the timeline is a little off from when you're actually contracting with artists and when you have to apply for these funds. In the instance where you are not able to give a full and accurate list because of the timeline, we ask that you present information about the project director, the organization itself, artists you've used in the past, and a very clear estimate of the type and caliber of artists that and individuals that will be involved in the project, to help supplement the lack of information that would have been provided had you had your entire list of artists already determined. So don't let that discourage you. It is, of course, best to be able to note an accurate list of the service providers and artists. That strengthens your application, but we do understand that if the timeline for application and implementation does not coincide properly, you may apply for these funds at a time where you don't have all of your artists lined up. The degree of innovation and artistry involved in the project is also a part of the artistic merit score, and the incorporation of artists and art forms and the local benefit of the project by using those local artists. The need and impact, the efforts to increase equity, access, accessibility, and involvement of diverse populations in the community at large. Any efforts to address a community need through your project, and then partnerships and collaborations are also a part of this score. Your planning and your design. It's always very important to consider the audience, who this project is for, and how their voice is being heard and amplified through the project. So the involvement of your target audience in the planning process is very important. Risk taking and trying something new. How are you doing something that's different, not only for the artists involved, but for the audiences involved as well? How are you going to fund this project, or what is the likelihood of this project continuing beyond the funding period? So once this grant program is done and we are on to the next fiscal year, how is your community impacted if this project doesn't happen? What is the sustainability plan of that project? Will it continue once this grant period is over? And the ability to track your performance indicators and to measure the growth and the outcomes of the project. And then 10% is your budget and the administration. The completeness of your application. Did you answer all of the questions? Did you upload all of the necessary uploads correctly? And then does your budget balance? And is it reasonable for the work that you are proposing? Just a couple of things to consider. Again, the need within the community's involvement in the planning, the priorities of not only the Division of the Arts, but also the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, tracking your outcomes to determine whether the project is successful. And not only is it successful, but if it's successful, how can it be even more successful later? And then a plan for partial funding. Often applicants apply, they ask for a certain amount, and they're awarded an amount that's less than what they asked for. How do you plan to take on that additional cost? What flexibility do you have in your budget to account for the reduction in your award? And here's where you apply for this grant, where it says apply here next to the red arrow. The application is currently open, so you could click there and go directly to the application now. A full list of the guidelines is just above that arrow where it says FY23 LPG guidelines, and you can find all of this at artsvr.org/LPG. And I believe Claire put that in the chat just now. And so here are a few just general grant writing tips. We are near the end of this webinar, but these are just some very, very basic grant writing tips and things that I want you to consider when you are developing your projects and beginning to write those applications. I am your grant manager. All of the funds that we distribute out of the Arts Council to artists and arts organizations, I am your point of contact. Particularly if you are a first-time grant writer, do not hesitate to email or call me. Full disclosure, because I want to make sure that everyone has access to me in a timely manner. I am going on vacation June 4th through 13th. I will not be available during that time. But after this call, tomorrow, and then anytime after I return, June 14th on, I am willing and happy to take your call and your email and answer any questions you may have. Give yourself time. Good grant writing does not happen last minute. If you feel like you may apply for one of these programs, start thinking about it now so that you have time to create drafts, get feedback, and make any necessary revisions before the deadline. I also want to point out that while we are going completely digital with our grant submissions, and I prefer that, sometimes technology just kind of is wonky and there are issues. Our deadlines are hard deadlines, so please give yourself time to submit on that online platform. In the instance there is some type of website glitch, internet glitch, we want to have time to plan for that, because once the application period closes, it is closed. Read through the guidelines. This will help to determine whether your project is a good fit or not. On each page of our website, for the Charles Lamarr Shaw Center Subsidy Grant, for the Get Ready Grants, and for the Louisiana Project Grants, there is a document that includes the entire list of the grant guidelines and a sample application. It's really important that you look at those and read those in their entirety. And if you have any additional questions, you are welcome to reach out to me and I will answer those questions for you. Artistic vision and goals. What are you accomplishing with your work? These are things to ponder, especially with the project grant. What are you doing and why are you doing it? When you're writing your application, especially the narrative, we're going to ask you questions about your organization, past services and projects, the community need, the artistic quality of your project. Answer those questions as clearly and directly as possible, and then come up with a very logical step-by-step plan and timeline for completion of those project goals. Your budget needs to be realistic and it needs to balance. For both, I should say all three grant applications have a budget template. Sometimes people have issues with the budget, and I'm happy to look at your budget or talk through anything that seems unclear with the budget template, but each application has a budget template. Create a realistic budget. Do some research if you're unsure about exact expenses, and then use the template to create a budget that reflects what you say you're going to do with your project. And remember, your budget, I should say, must balance, meaning your expenses and your revenue must match, meaning the money that you have coming in and the money that you're putting out must be the same amount. Get feedback. You can do it from people around you, within your organization, within your networks, or you can get it from me. I am happy to review applications. Remember, I do ask that you get those to me as soon as possible. Basically, what I'm saying is if I get an application at 4:30 on July 1st, I can't give you feedback on that. But if you get me an application, 3-4 days a week, 2 weeks before the deadline, I'm happy to review it. I'm happy to give you feedback and talk through anything you need to. Supplemental materials. Most of the grants will request supplemental materials, photographs, articles, YouTube videos, and sound clips. This gives us an idea of who your organization is, what you've done in the past, the quality of your work from the past, and we'll give the grant reviewers an idea of what you plan to produce and the quality of your work. And then follow the instructions explicitly and triple check your application before submitting. And once you hit submit, that application is final. I do recommend that you submit your application as far in advance of the deadline as possible. What happens after you click submit is I check for eligibility. If we are ahead of July 1st and you made an error, you didn't submit your 501c3 designation letter, or something else is missing. If it's before July 1st, I'll call you back and I'll ask for that missing document, and I'll give you an opportunity to check your application, edit your application to make sure it's eligible. I will only contact you for eligibility issues, again, if it's submitted prior to July 1st. Once July 1st comes, whatever submitted is submitted. It's either eligible and goes to the review process, or ineligible, and you'll receive that notification through Submittable as well. And then all eligible applications go on to the review process, where we obtain outside reviewers who are objective, who are trained on the guidelines and the priorities of the program. They score your application and then have an open review process where they discuss the applications, and we allow grantees, or applicants, I should say, to sit in on that discussion process to hear honest, constructive feedback about their applications and their projects. And I believe this is what I just went over. Your application will be deemed eligible or ineligible The panelists will score and convene to review those applications. As I said, notification of your award takes up to several weeks. Once you are eligible, you move on to the review process. Grants take a long time to compile and to write. And so I like to give reviewers a good amount of time to review them. You spend a lot of time putting it together. They need ample time to review it and to make sure that they're reviewing all of your supplemental materials. So once you go to the review process, there's about 4 to 6 weeks where the reviewers are reading and scoring your application. You'll then be notified of the day of convening where we'll have open discussion about the applications. Once that open discussion happens, it's anywhere from 2 to 3 days for funding determinations to be made. You'll see here on the screen, it says RAC, that stands for Regional Arts Council. We are the Regional Arts Council. Our board of directors sees the funding determinations and they have to sign off on it. And then you're notified of your award through Submittable, and all of your subsequent grant agreements and any additional forms that you need to submit to receive your award are sent back to me through Submittable. So once you receive that award and all of your notifications have been sent through Submittable, you send your agreement back to us. We issue your payment, and we do that in 2 stages. So 75% gets sent to you up front, and then the remaining 25% gets sent after completion of the project and submission and acceptance of your final report. We do ask that you inform us of those grant funded activities so that we can celebrate you and celebrate your community and take part in those events. We also ask that you place logos at the bottom of any and all media related to your grant funded project. That includes websites, that includes social media postings, that includes newspaper articles, magazine articles. Anything referencing your project needs to have the Arts Council of Greater Baton Rouge logo, the Louisiana Division of the Arts logo, and the National Endowment for the Arts logo, all 3 of those logos, and a credit statement. I did not put the credit statement here, but it lives on our website on the Louisiana Project Grants webpage. Those things need to be stated verbatim with those 3 logos on any and all media related to your project. And then the final report is due 30 days after completion of the project, or on October 31st, that should be 2023, whichever comes first. And we've reached the end of this webinar. I appreciate you guys logging on. My contact information is here. I have at the bottom, always leave a voicemail. I am frequently away from my desk. Sometimes I'm working remotely, sometimes I'm in the field, but I do have access to my voicemail remotely. And so if you call and I am not here, or I might be someplace else in the building and not at my desk, if you leave a voicemail, I will make sure to call you back. I'm also really timely with email responses. So if it's something that is just a quick question, if you shoot me an email, you're probably going to get an answer back within the hour. That's the quickest way to get in touch with me. But I am happy to take a call. I am happy to talk through, troubleshoot with you. Just please make sure you leave a voicemail. And with that, I will open up for questions. I'm going to stop sharing. And if you have a question for me, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask that question.
Ms. Russell.
Yes.
Thank you for your time. On our grant, we have $6,000 from another funding source, and we anticipate historically $1,000 from another funding source, and conservatively we're expecting $1,200 from a Blue Jean Day fundraiser. So that gives us $6,000 in hand, and historically $2,200 on the table. Is there a problem with that? That gives us $8,200, and we're asking for $75,000.
And what the 6,000, where's that coming from?
It's an anonymous granting source.
An anonymous granting source, as long as it is not related to any state funds,
No.
and as long as it does not come from the National Endowment for the Arts, that can be used as your cash match.
What about the other 22? We have to have 50% matching funds. So we have this 22 on the table. Does that qualify? Is there a problem with that?
There's no problem with that. So your matching funds have those criteria as far as not being state funds, not being NEA funds. You can include funds within your total project budget that are within those guidelines. Just your matching funds, that 50% cannot come from one of those sources that were mentioned.
Right, yeah. And
so you're good.
Second thing, we send out articles to the Advocate, and the Daily Star, and the local Action News online newspaper. And they often edit that logo, language y'all want us to put on there. So that's kind of out of our control, even though we send it to them. So I just want you to know
completely understand that. And we have been there ourselves as the Arts Council for grants that we received. We send the logos sometimes, and the publications make their own choices. So we understand that. We do keep an eye and monitor those things. So just know that we're aware that sometimes that doesn't happen. I'm mainly talking about when posters are created, when we visit projects or performances and we open the program and we don't see a logo on the program or the poster or the advertisement. But we do understand that sometimes press releases and things like that get edited. But if it's a graphic that you are creating, we expect that the proper acknowledgement is given based on the guidelines.
Yeah, it's in the credit of all of our movies, but we just can't control the Advocate and the Daily Star.
We understand that. You're welcome. Any other questions? Pop in and ask them if you feel inclined. Well, great. I hope that this was informative. I'm thankful that you guys all showed up. This recording will be posted to our website in a few days. Remember that all of this information and more can be accessed on our website, artsvr.org. And I hope that each of you have a great day. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions.
Thank you.